Okay, so what we have here is our game, and as we move the mouse around it, the red rectangle follows the mouse, and if we use the keyboard, we can move the black rectangle around. You can see you can do both of those things at once. So what I want to happen is that when I hover the red rectangle over the black rectangle, I want to acquire points. So one thing to make sure you understand at this point is that, is why the red rectangle is over top of the black one. And that can be explained if we look in the paint component, the paint method. If we look in the paint method here, notice the black rectangle is drawn first. Then we change the color to red. Then we change the then we draw the red rectangle. When you're painting things to the screen, it just paints them right on top of each other. So there's an order here that happens, and the last thing painted is going to be on top. And in our case, it's the red rectangle. So to actually figure out when these two objects, or when these two rectangles are on top of each other, it can get into some pretty complicated code comparing their x and y positions and such. It can be done, but it's rather messy. And what I like to do is use someone else's code when I can. And that's where these two rectangle objects come in useful. So we've created these two rectangle objects. So if you jump out to the documentation about the rectangle class, you'll notice that a rectangle object has four fields. It has a height and a width, which are integers, and an x and y position, which are integers. And the x is the x coordinate of the upper left corner. The y is the y coordinate of the upper left corner. The other method that is really useful here is intersects. Because what this does is this tells us if the two rectangles intersect each other, which is really nice, because then we can just check, do they intersect each other? And if they do, then there's points being acquired. So let's jump back into our program and set this up. So these are called data classes because they store the data that we're going to use to render an image. So R1 is going to be for the black rectangle, and R2 is going to be for the red rectangle. So the first thing we have to do in the init is we have to initialize these things. So in the init, I'm going to say R1 is equal to new rectangle. So I'm calling the constructor, and we can peek out here at the constructor and see that the constructor takes, there's a number of constructors, but I'm interested in this one that takes x, y, width, and height. So I'm going to say x is going to be current x, current y, width. Oh, the width is 10 and the height is 10. And then I'm going to say R2 is equal to new rectangle, and R2 is going to store the red rectangle, which is current xm, current ym, 10, 10. Oh, pardon me, 20, 20. So now we've constructed these rectangles, and we've given the top right-hand corner. So what happens is I have to continually update the x position and the y position for these rectangles. And where I'm going to do that is I'm going to do that in this action performed method, because this is the method that's continually being called at a fixed time interval. So I want to continuously call this method and update the position of those rectangles. So I'm going to update the rectangles before I repaint. So I'm going to say R1.setLocation, and setLocation takes the 2 points, and that's going to be current x, current y, and R2.setLocation, and that's going to be current xm, current ym. There we go. So now let's build this to make sure everything's okay. Oh, we still have it up and running here, so let's close that down. Let's build this again. Success. So now I have all this information about these two rectangles inside these rectangle objects. So what I can then do is I can use that Boolean method called intersects, and I can do if R1.intersects R2, so that's going to return a Boolean. Well, what do I want to do if R1 intersects R2? Let's for now just go system.out.println touching. So that's going to continually print out touching over and over and over again. And again, that's going to be called just before the repaint method hits. So we run this. Oh, we run this. So now, but if I get really close to it, it's touching. So what I want to do here is test my limits. The bottom right-hand corner, good. Bottom left-hand corner, good. Top, good. Bottom. So now what I've done is I've found a way to register that these two rectangles are touching. So now if I want to keep a score, what I can do is just introduce a new field. So I'm going to introduce a field into this called a score field, and this is going to be an integer, right? And the score is initially 0, so whenever they're touching, what do I want to do? I want to add 1 to score, so I'm going to say score is equal to score plus 1. And then let's just for fun here, let's go touching, and let's output the score so the user can see that. So I'm going to build this file. I'm going to run my game now, and notice when I touch it, now it's keeping track of score. I stop, and the score continues to build up. Well, this is great that I can see my score in my general output, but what I really want is I want it to show in my applet. So in the next video, we're going to start putting some of the score and such onto the screen. I hope that helped.